Hello and welcome. My name is Barkha Dutt. I am in Tamil Nadu on the ground as our journey on the road with the pandemic quite literally has taken us from the north of India to the very south of India. We were in Karnataka, and from Karnataka we have moved our way further south to Tamil Nadu, and I am at the moment in a small village in Salem. Salem is among the districts of Tamil Nadu that has been worst hit by COVID, and in fact, in the last 24 hours, it is the state of Tamil Nadu that has added the most number of COVID cases to the country's statistics. And remember that there is, when we talk about the second wave, the wave actually seems to shift across states. There was a time when Maharashtra was contributing the maximum number of cases, and now we have moved from the west to the south here in Tamil Nadu. On this special broadcast today, we'll be looking at the scathing commentary that has come from the Delhi High Court about the vaccine rollout program of the government, and we'll be looking at the basis of the claim by the ICMR chief that by July 1 crore Indians will be vaccinated every day. Where are these vaccines going to come from? But it's important as we discuss these policy issues to remember that this involves real families, real tragedies, people dying literally every day. So the following images may disturb you, but I think it's important, and there is backlash against bringing these images as well. What's happening outside crematoriums, what's happening outside places of worship, what's happening outside burial grounds, what's happening outside hospitals, where families are just breaking down. In Salem, where I am, at the 3 crematoriums that have been set aside for COVID cremations, there has been a tenfold increase in the COVID bodies that are coming in the last fortnight. And when we were standing outside the crematorium, these were the scenes of heartbreak that we saw just moments ago. Just a glimpse of how many families break down every single day. And from the same crematorium, something I saw that was really disturbing today, the continued stigma around this virus, around this pandemic, no matter where you travel. If we bring up those pictures now, as I was saying, a tenfold increase in the bodies that are coming, but the man who manages this crematorium, and you'll see those pictures in a moment from now, also showed us urns of ashes that are lying unclaimed, right? We've been making the point of how many people are just abandoning their dead. All of these ashes are lying unclaimed, and some of those urns have been there for 2 months. For 2 months, because nobody is stepping forward to claim them, and they are simply being left abandoned there. And we don't actually know how they're being documented, what they're being counted as. These are abandoned bodies that are now being cremated by volunteers who, by the way, say that people run away. And there you can see the long wait for bodies, some lying on the floor. So it really doesn't matter, frankly, whether you go to Delhi or you go to, where you go, you can go from the north to the south. Some of the fault lines are quite universal, but of course, the handling of them does vary from state to state. Now, let me introduce our guest today, because there's just one way out of this pandemic, and that way is vaccines. And the government claims that all of India will be vaccinated by the end of the year. The Delhi High Court, however, says that those who did not tap the untapped potential of vaccine manufacturers should be charged with manslaughter. These are the observations of the Delhi High Court. These are the observations of Delhi High Court. And the High Court also called it a tearing emergency and said that there's palpable disquiet across the country. This is in total contrast to the claims that are being made by the government. Let me introduce our guest, Tavleen Singh, who's been making the point about the failure of the government repeatedly in her Indian Express and Jansatta columns. And I think she'll talk a little bit about this vaccine rollout and how shambolic it has been in some ways. And yet the government claims that by July, everything's going to be okay. Dr. Ganguly, who's been the head of the ICMR, the Indian Council for Medical Research, is with us. Dr. Ganguly's successor has just gone on record to say that there is no vaccine shortage in the country. We'll look at that claim. What is he basing it on? We also have a commentator and analyst, Pathikrit Payne, with us. Welcome to the program. Swapneil Parikh, Dr. Swapneil Parikh, I should say, author and physician, non-stop demander of the mRNA vaccines, not just more vaccines in India, but has been making the point repeatedly that we need to get those vaccines from outside into India. And then Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate with the Supreme Court, as the courts now seem to be stepping in, and can they really, because remember this was the High Court, you need the Supreme Court before anyone in the government really pays attention. Now very quickly, we all know that vaccines have run short. We know that in whether it's Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu, vaccine programs have had to be halted for a couple of days because there are no vaccines. All the chief ministers have been making this point. But what about our villages? Rural India, and this really doesn't matter where I go, rural India is not even being considered. You go to the primary healthcare centers and there are no vaccines or there are no primary healthcare centers. I went to a clutch of villages in Tamil Nadu where the Pradhan or the president told me that there was no health center in his area, and he said no one is thinking about either farmers or villagers, and villagers are too scared, he said, right now with deaths taking place every month in the villages, of going to towns and cities, which is where he says the vaccines are available. So this is an on-the-spot report from Hosur in Tamil Nadu in one particular panchayat, and this is the panchayat president. We're now going to get a sense of the ground situation from the Sarpanch of the Channasandram Panchayat, who has 7 villages that he actually oversees. Jaikumar Reddy is with us. Jaikumar, please tell us, in the month of May, how many deaths have you seen? Because in many villages we are traveling to, people are seeing us and reporting in rural India a surge, an increase in the number of deaths.
Respected Madam, I am Jaikumar Reddy, Channasandram Panchayat village, Tamil Nadu, Hosur in Tamil Nadu. In month of May, nearly 20 members due to COVID, the deaths occur in my panchayat. And one more thing is, in my villages, no one has came for testing purpose. And one more thing, injections also, we have to go for nearby towns or cities. I am requesting government to provide all the villages camp wise for testing as well as COVID injections. This is my major request to government. And
so you say that you have seen in the 7 villages that you look after in your panchayat, yes, 20 deaths in the month of May alone.
Yeah.
And the biggest problem is there's no testing in the villages?
Yeah, no testing, madam. Still now nobody has came to villages. No one has came to villages to test the COVID.
So no RT-PCR testing is happening?
No, madam. So any test we have to go for cities or nearby towns, madam.
So you have to go to cities and towns, and that's a problem for the villagers?
Yeah, definitely, madam. In almost all the villages, nearly 500 people, 1,000 people, like that is there. In total, our panchayat strength will be 5,000 people. In 5,000 people also, they won't come for testing and all. Please, I am requesting all the state government and central government, instead of producing the cities, as well as you send the villages camp also. I am requesting nearly every panchayat one camp. That is useful for us also. For we all the villages people are scared to go towns and.
Why are they scared?
Due to the rush, madam.
At the hospitals in the cities?
Rushness. That's why they can't go there. I'm requesting government to.
So very important from Jaikumar Reddy, we're hearing that in his own panchayat in the month of May there have been 20 deaths, and he's saying that you have to go to a nearby city or a town to get the testing. What is the vaccine situation at the local clinic?
Vaccine situation, every day they are giving 500 doses. Nearly 3 lakhs.
No, in the villages.
The villages, they are not giving any vaccine. They are not giving any camp and all.
Nothing.
They are giving the industrials. First preference they are giving the industries and all. They are not bothered about the village people. Village peoples and farmers. For compared to the any company, that farmers also one big company in our India. Please, I'm requesting, give all farmers to vaccine as well as testing also, madam.
Are many people in your villages farmers?
Yeah, all the peoples are farmers.
What
only,
kind of
except
cropping?
10%.
What cropping?
All vegetables and ragi, paddy, these kind of crops they are.
Okay. And one more thing, that is there a lot of fear? Sometimes people are dying at home only. Is that happening?
Definitely, madam. All the villages are get scared because of this COVID. Every village 3-4 deaths will be there. Due to that death only, they are scared more. That's why they came. They are not coming from home. They are staying in home only.
They don't go to the. And sometimes, what is the problem they face when they do reach hospital?
Reach hospitals, they are not getting the availability of beds and oxygen things.
Right.
Major drawbacks is beds, madam. Still now they are suffering
shortage of beds. Okay.
Major thing is everything will be the shortage in our states.
So once again, we're really hearing how rural India remains neglected, often unchronicled. The problem remains the same: the absence of local, immediate, accessible testing facilities, the absence of vaccines. This is the story that is holding true from the north to the south in small villages like this one. Okay, so you heard that Panchayat president say no one cares about farmers, no one cares about villagers. I'm requesting the state and the center, please give us vaccines. But where are these vaccines? I think that's the really important question before us today. And on what basis does the government, the ICMR chief, say that we'll be vaccinating 1 crore Indians every day? On what grounds? Let me just bring in Tavleen. Especially in context of the Delhi High Court observations that there need to be some people charged with manslaughter for not tapping into vaccine manufacturers and their potential within India itself. Now, obviously, this has no enforceability, this has no real consequences, but in terms of scathing commentary, it's pretty serious.
Yeah, and what the Supreme Court has said. The Supreme Court has really pulled up the central government and said, that your policy is completely irrational and arbitrary. These are very strong words. And, in my view, they are very appropriate words because actually it has been irrational and arbitrary. And what worries me the most, I've been writing about the mistakes that have been made, and nothing has changed. The same people that made the mistakes are still in charge. And what the only change that has happened is they now come on television every day and tell us, don't worry, we're going to ramp up. This ramp up, the words itself are so, misleading, because there is no way you can go in this month from vaccinating less than 2 million people a day to 10 million by next month. We need to do 10 million a day, because if you're to vaccinate all the adult population by the end of the year, that's what you need to do. And, I don't know where they've ordered these vaccines. So far, they talk about 5 crores here and 10 crores there. But what we need is 200 million doses minimum. And now at least Mr. Paul, or Dr. Paul, whatever his name is, has admitted that you need 216 crore or something like that, 260 million, right? Where is this going to come from? What are they, why are they misleading the people? Why has that been, I was looking at an index just now. India is in that particular index, which is by the Spectator magazine, third from the last in terms of the number of people we have vaccinated per 100. It does surprise me, because you see, what they are not telling us at all is where these vaccines are going to come from, and what the game plan is. How is it going to work? Are they spending, is the central government going to do it? Is it the state governments? So, what you see really is total confusion from the start, and this confusion continues, and we really can't afford it.
Absolutely. Dr. Ganguly, were you surprised to hear your predecessor make the claim of 1 crore vaccinations a day from July? Do you not wonder where these vaccines are going to come from? And again, it is the High Court that has said that why do you make announcements that you can't implement? Is there something that the ICMR and the government knows that none of us know?
Actually, Barkha, the pain in the eyes of the ladies and the young girls was heartbreaking. I have never seen that before. And at this time in the vaccination, one of the major thing is going to be ethics and equity. It need to reach villagers, it need to reach distant population, it needs to reach homeless, it need to reach the street guys as well as the migrant laborers. They can't even know how to really log in, where to go. They are on the movement. It need to reach them on the spot. So vaccine, as we know that how much vaccine we need. We know that how much we are vaccinating at this given moment. We also know that in UK there has not been a single death. They were in a worse situation than us. The USA, Europe, and others, they were almost on their knees. And after vaccinating, uh, they have remove the deaths. So we know that we need to vaccinate. To vaccinate, we need to procure and we need to put orders right in the time. We also need to look at our regulation, like the Pfizer and Moderna. Moderna wants to come. It wants to work with Cipla to produce it. The Canadian messenger RNA guys are with the biological ones. They're in conversation with them. So they now Pfizer and Moderna have gone to almost every continent, and hundreds of millions people have been vaccinated. We have the safety data, we have the geographical immune response data. Why we need to put an indemnity clause and they have to do another trial here? Phase 4 data could easily be obtained. So we are losing precious time. And the other thing which actually prevented us from expanding our current vaccination rates were that we didn't have raw material. We were looking at APIs. We never looked at the that we need to produce raw materials of the
Yeah.
vaccine in our own country. Finally,
So would you, yeah,
one
what
good
would you
thing which is
describe? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, complete your point.
one
Go
good
ahead.
thing which is coming up in the vaccine scenario, like messenger RNA is a synthetic vaccine. If companies like Cipla, like Reddy's Lab and other come up and they start producing the vaccine, our vaccine capability will enhance tremendously. So we need to put advance orders and we need to really check that how much do we have, and central government should procure it. Till date, only central
But sir,
government has procured vaccine. The state governments
but I
have
want
some.
to jump in here. Yeah, I know what you're saying, and Pfizer and Moderna have in fact refused to engage directly with the states. But the point is, this is like reacting after the horse has bolted the stable. I just want to know on what basis, Swapneil, and then I'll come to you, Pathikrit and Sanjay, or is there any basis for the government to say that we will be past this crisis starting July? And before you respond, can we please just listen? I'm just going to play out what the head of the Indian Council for Medical Research said. He also said, by the way, there is no vaccine shortage. I do not know. I would urge him to come either to the villages I've been to in UP or the villages I've been to in Tamil Nadu. And by the way, you don't need to go to the villages. You can see what's happening across our cities in the country today. But this is what the ICMR head said on vaccine shortage.
If you look at data, there is Pfizer and Moderna being produced by USA. You have the Sputnik produced by Russia. You have the Covishield produced by UK and India. You have the Sinovac produced by China. You have Covaxin produced by India. So India is one of the 5 countries which is producing vaccines. If we were not producing vaccines, imagine where would we be? So there is no shortage of vaccines. The shortage is what you feel if you want to vaccinate the country within a month.
The shortage is what you feel if you want to vaccinate the country in a month. Swapneil, this pandemic has already been on from February to June. It has been much more than a month. And the vaccines have been in short supply almost throughout, except for maybe the first month when, yes, there was some hesitancy, but people were ramping up and lining up and ready to get their shots. Those shots were just not available. What do you make of the ICMR's claim that starting July, this crisis will end? We'll have enough vaccines. By the end of the year, all of India will be vaccinated.
Barkha, I desperately hope that's true. If that is true, we're in not in a good position, because a good position would have been having that kind of supply in February or March. But if that turns out to be true, great. Let me run through some math. We have about 1.4 billion people in our country. Let's currently exclude about 40% of that, saying that they are below 18 and currently ineligible for vaccination. I'll come to why we actually need to vaccinate below 18, but let's exclude them for now. That gives us about 840 million people. With 2 doses per person, that's about over 1.6 billion doses. That means, and we've done about 220 million doses already since we started. We need to do more per month now, every month till the end of this year, to hit the target of administering those 1.6 billion doses. We have to do something like about 1.4 billion doses to go. That's over 200 million doses per month and over 7 million doses per day. So if there isn't a shortage in the country right now, why aren't we administering 7 million doses every day? Why are we doing less than half that? If we have adequate vaccines, and we certainly seem to have the distribution channels to administer the vaccines we have, why aren't we doing the numbers that we need to do already? Then we have to come to the fact that, let me try and explain something. So for containment, we have to talk about the herd immunity threshold by vaccination. Now, assuming a reproductive number of 2.5, that's how many people each infected person will in turn infect on average. If our vaccines have efficacy, if our vaccine efficacy is about 80%, then we have to vaccinate. Then our vaccine coverage for containment has to be somewhere around 60% without any other interventions used. If our vaccine efficacy is 60%, then our coverage needs to be about 100% for herd immunity for containment to stop a pandemic without other measures. That means that even in our best case scenario, we're not going to hit 100% of the population above 18. We need to vaccinate below 18. That's going to be a requirement. And as soon as you start including those numbers, it's huge. More importantly, we don't have vaccines that have been adequately tested in that population. So we have 0 vaccines today that can be administered to that age group. The vaccines that have been authorized for that are the mRNA vaccines. So, we mentioned that we need more vaccines, but it's not just numbers. We need a more diverse portfolio of vaccines. So right now we have gone very adenovirus vector vaccine heavy, and they're great. If you have the opportunity to take that vaccine, please do. But we know that there are some issues with those vaccines in younger people, a very, very, very small risk of blood clots that is massively outweighed by the benefit of vaccination. But clearly we need more options. As the pandemic starts, as transmission starts decreasing, we'll need to reassess the risk benefit and have safer vaccine choices. So the mRNA vaccines, protein subunit vaccines, nasal vaccines, single dose vaccines like J&J. And let's keep in mind that even the Chinese whole virus vaccines, inactivated whole virus vaccines, have received a WHO EUA, 2 of them. There does seem to be a lot of capacity there. If we look at Project Serena, Project S, it was a study where a town in Brazil where they vaccinated 75% of the population. And what they found with CoronaVac, and what they found was a 95% reduction in deaths, a 86% reduction in hospitalization, 80% reduction in symptomatic disease. And the study even suggested that by just targeting the adult population, there will be benefits to the population below 18 that wasn't vaccinated. So right now we need to diversify our vaccine portfolio. Of
Can,
course, we
can,
need
can,
to.
can I just jump in? Can I just jump in? I need to ask you a question. And my question is this. If you had to describe the vaccine rollout so far, what's the adjective you'd use?
Disaster.
Tavleen, would you add to that? I mean, I think that's pretty blunt. If we can get Tavleen there.
It's been catastrophic. It's been, when we've literally not done what should have been done last year. Most countries were ordering and paying for vaccinations last year. We didn't even bother to ramp up our primary health centers to make vaccination possible, leave alone order the vaccinations. And now you've got not just a shortage of vaccinations, you've got to think of next year. Where are we going to get? There are going to be booster doses needed. Secondly, in the past year, we've had a year in which we could have at least acknowledged that our primary health services in rural India do not exist, full stop, right? Why have we not done that? Why have state governments not at least, got collectors to go to every primary health center, make sure that it exists? Most of them, as you know, in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, are on paper. They were built just for politicians to make money out of them. They're buildings, So, I mean, I'm just so frightened for India because the whole world is now moving on. They say the US economy is taking off like never before. Europe people are going on holidays, and we are going to be stuck for at least another year, isolated and a barrier country. It's very scary.
Yep. It is, and even in southern states, typically considered more developed, more evolved, and in many ways they are. You go to the villages, and the villagers are just they're too scared to go to towns and cities to get vaccinated, and there's a sense of paranoia. There's a lockdown. They don't know how to go. They're seeing their neighbors die. Pathikrit, defenders of the government have somehow managed to inject nationalism even into this conversation. I don't even understand what place it has in this conversation. Journalists are the targets of their irritation rather than the shortage of vaccines being their focus. It absolutely makes no sense to me. How is this defensible? And are we now going to call the judges of the Delhi High Court that have said that some people should be charged with manslaughter anti-national? Because that is the only label that seems left to use against anybody who criticizes the handling of this pandemic. What is your own understanding of the vaccine rollout and the shortage and the claim made by the government that, hey, it'll all be okay, just give it another 6 months. Starting July, there's some magic wand coming that we don't know about.
Barkha, we are facing an apocalyptic situation. People are dying, and so anger is justified. Somebody very close to me, like a cousin, that person is literally battling for his life right now with a 60% lungs damage, and I don't know whether he would survive or not. So we have a situation for which we don't have a reference point. We have never faced like this before. So whatever the government has done in the hindsight, it is true that you can say some things could have been done better. But I'll give you certain technical issues, technical challenges which are there. For example, last year when regulatory shortcuts were taken by ICMR to approve Covaxin, there were a lot of apprehensions that were created. And that's where the vaccine hesitancy started. Number one was that. Number two, why is it that we could not ramp up the production? One of the prime reason is Defense Production Act of United States, which completely banned any kind of export of raw materials. And I remember Adar Poonawalla once actually tweeted on this, that United States need to release or loosen those restrictions. Number three, for all the vaccine makers that we have in this country, not everybody has a biological safety level 3, which is mandatory for making any kind of vaccine with something as virulent as coronavirus. Number four, it takes 4 to 5 years to make a vaccine. So here the coronavirus emerged last year, and within a span of 1 year, everybody, the rest of the world, in India also, efforts have been made to reduce the time to roll out the vaccine. But yes, there has been certain challenges, there has been issues, and I have also lost people. So what should I do? fact remains that, even when you actually give a contract to a vaccine maker, it takes 80 to 100 days for one production batch to get completed. So even if you give something in the month of March, it will not be ready before the month of late May. That is the problem. Now, what has happened so far as, I don't know what the government is saying about the vaccine rollout later on, but I know certain data. If it helps, I'll be happy to share. In the month of March, April, for both Serum Institutes and Bharat Biotech, for capacity expansion, they asked for money. So supply credit to the extent of 3,000 crore was given to Serum Institute, 1,500 crore was given to Bharat Biotech. It is expected, as per their claims, not the government of India, that by the month of July, August, they would ramp up their production to the extent of 11 crore per month by Covishield for Serum Institute and 10 crore per month for Covaxin. Who are the partners? Indian Immunologicals, Bharat Immunologicals, both state government or central government owned vaccine makers, and Hafkin of Maharashtra have been given a contract. So there is an expectation, as per the data, 75 crore of Covishield vaccine will be available in the next 5 months, around 7.5 crore a month. Around 55 crore would come from Covaxin. Around 15.6 crore will come from Sputnik, which have a collaboration with 5 vaccine makers in India, including Panacea Biotech, including Dr. Reddy's laboratory. Just one point, Barkha. These are data. We will see how it rolls out. But one thing that we have to look into is vaccine wastage. No amount of vaccine production will help if we end up wasting 37%, 40% of the vaccines. And that is an apocalyptic thing. That's a criminal wastage. That is also at par with manslaughter. There is frustration in this country. But if you do away with the regulatory issues, there will be question mark again if something happens. So I don't think that the government has done the best thing. But do we have a reference point? I don't know. Could somebody else have done better? I don't know.
Okay, you're saying the government hasn't done a great job, but could we have done better? You don't know. You're saying vaccine wastage is also like manslaughter.
Barkha, I am not saying the government has done a great job. I'm saying that question is, there are challenges, institutional challenges of making a vaccine. That is the problem. Today, they actually entered with an agreement with Biological E for 30 crore vaccine. I was one of the person who wrote to the Prime Minister that do away with the regulatory issues. So these are happening, but you just can't do away with all the regulatory problems. Remember, it takes 5 to 10 years to make a vaccine. We have squeezed it down to less than 1 year across the world. We could have done better, no doubt. But the government's communication is a problem.
Okay, let's just separate that for a moment. Let me just get Sanjay and then we'll go around the panel again. Sanjay, the role of the courts now, the very, very scathing remarks from the 2-judge bench of the Delhi High Court. What are the real consequences of it until the Supreme Court similarly intervenes? Can we see the government being nudged into action?
Well, it does seem that the courts are the only forum in which the government can be held accountable or answerable in some form or the other. Nobody else. The parliament isn't working. Even in parliament, there will be all these whips, so the questioners get suspended. The courts are the only forum through which citizens get to know. And the judges are trained lawyers. So whenever there is obfuscation on the part of the government, whenever there is concealment on the part of the government, courts cannot take over administration, but they can certainly ensure fairness, and they can certainly nudge the government to coming up with timelines, to coming up with answers. And that's what's been happening so far. Of course, the government sometimes seems to take court proceedings in a confrontational stance. It almost told the Supreme Court, look, you have no business running the administration. The courts are not running the administration. The courts are only asking, is there somebody in charge? On what basis are you acting? And is the process of administration fair? The court's nudging has brought some results, particularly in the case of registrations for vaccines and things like that. I think if you ask the people of India, they are glad that the courts are doing something rather than being mere rubber stampers of executive authority. And the way the executive has behaved.
But Sanjay, what impact will it have in real terms? I mean, it may lead some of us to say, oh, the court has reflected the anxiety and the anger of the people, but the court can't produce the vaccines out of thin air. And how do you respond to Pathikrit's argument that there are institutional problems, there are regulatory problems, vaccines normally take much longer to go through a period of clinical trials? I mean, my short answer to it would have been that we could have purchased the vaccines from across we still haven't indemnified Pfizer. We still haven't given indemnity to Pfizer. So we've taken months, we've dragged our feet on this.
Absolutely. But who's put in the regulatory mechanism? It's the government itself. It is for the government to withdraw that regulatory mechanism in a hurry. And if it does so, or even if it temporarily suspends that mechanism for specific cases, if anybody challenges it, the court is unlikely to rule against the government. What seems to be happening is that people like Parikh or people, others who are involved, have to come to court and say, look, there is this silly, stupid rule which is being enforced for the moment. Can you please tell the government to take action on that rule, or can you please strike it down? So after there are petitions like that, what is the court to do? To sit on its hands and majestically say, there is nothing that we can do, you can make a representation to the government? No, the courts ask the government, please, what is the basis in law for this rule? Is it something which is an outrageous defiance of logic? And what do you think is the way forward? Do you need our assistance in any manner whatsoever? Beyond that, what has the court done? The court ensuring basic fairness.
Yeah.
I'm done speaking.
But I'm still, as Tavleen said, yes, thanks. And that was very clear and lucid. But I think, as Tavleen said, I think I do feel really terrified for what's going to happen. And I do see a situation where, vaccines are our only way out, and they're just not going to come at the volume and the speed, at least from what I can tell. And there could be something that I don't know. Dr. Ganguly, do you think that the ICMR head should have been making claims that there is no vaccine shortage? His exact quote was, there is no vaccine shortage unless you want to vaccinate the country in 1 month. Did you agree with that comment?
Actually, you have seen that vaccines of that very small percentage of the population have got vaccinated, and 18 to 45 are not getting vaccinated at this given moment. So the projections which were being made were made for future, that there are so many companies who will be producing vaccine, Moderna and Pfizer will be coming in, so there will be enough vaccine. That was the future. That is not the current reality. I agree with you. You made a comment that we need to procure vaccine from outside. And nobody has ever paid indemnity in vaccine for last 50 years. I have never seen anybody in India ever paying, any company paying, or government who is a major sponsor paying any indemnity to anyone. So there is a risk-benefit ratio in vaccine, as Swapneil has said. So you need to really, you could have removed these clauses, and as Pathikrit has said, you cannot make vaccine in a jiffy. It takes time, and there are production lines. You have to make advanced bookings. So at this given moment, the only way out is that in the United States and Europe, there is a vaccine slack, and they have vaccinated about 60-70% of their population. We should now try to buy somehow or other and make a projection which is realistic. And as Mr. Biden has done, that supply chains are still not enough, and it is not moving rightly. The inventories and supply chains, we need to bring in experts for that. Government cannot do that. It cannot manage the supply chain and inventories as the private.
But may I just jump in there? I understand. Sure. Sure, I understand that things can't be done in a jiffy, but we are in a jiffy because we left it for too late. I think that needs to be said again and again. Swapneil, if I may come to you, you heard Pathikrit's math. I was wondering if you agreed with it. That was the first question. And the second is, I know you've been arguing that this indemnity should be given to Pfizer, and you keep saying, who will indemnify us against COVID? And my third point is, Shahid Jamil, who's one of our best virologists, he did the math on a program. I think, Swapnil, you were also on that program, and he said Nirmala Sitharaman announced 35,000 crores for vaccines in the budget. If even 25,000 crores of this had actually been used to pay and order vaccines at 250 rupees a dose, you would have had 1 billion vaccines today. But you did not even ramp up the production of Covaxin, which is now having to seek foreign partners. You did not order enough from the Serum Institute. I understand the raw material shortage, but if last year in October, when this Delta strain, as the WHO has now called it, was first detected, if you had acted then, you would not have been short today.
Absolutely. So I agree with almost everything you said. I think what happened in India is we had a plan of pandemic response that was predicated on the absolute best case scenario. Was everything possible that can go right is going to go right, and nothing that can go wrong is going to go wrong. And of course, as we know, that never happens. We can hope for the best case scenario, of course, but we have to be ready with contingencies. We have to be ready with a plan B. And my concern is now, when we are saying that there's no shortage, that we will have 1 billion doses or whatever the number of doses we claim we will have in the next few months, we're making those same mistakes again. We're once again assuming that everything is going to go right, nothing is going to go wrong, and that's going to be a problem. One thing I want to point out, Barkha, I'm a fan of all vaccines, but about the mRNA vaccines, so we have mRNA vaccines, whole virus vaccines, vectored vaccines, and protein subunit vaccines. Every other platform, the whole virus vaccines, vectored vaccines, subunit vaccines have stumbled. They've been unable to scale. Not only have their production numbers not gone up as planned, they've gone down. The mRNA platform has scaled. Consistently, they have been adding numbers to what they expect to roll out in 2021 and 2022. That shows you the value of this platform. Oh, and by the way, it has phenomenal efficacy. And by the way, it has phenomenal safety. So these are important considerations. One more point. We mentioned a lot of issues about wastage, equity, prioritization. There is one solution for all of these. It's not simple, but community-based vaccination. It's easy to say we can't waste vaccine, but it's criminal to waste vaccine. But what does that person do? Someone can't just walk into the center. 18-year-olds can't walk into the center when there are 10 doses, when there's a vial open and there are 6 doses left in it. The people at the center can't go out onto the road and start asking, hey, have you been vaccinated? Are you interested in the vaccine? That's how you prevent wastage of vaccine. That's how it's happened globally. They've prevented wastage of vaccine. When there are extra doses left, they go out into the community and open it up. But because of the layers, the technology layers, the hurdles that are put into place for doing this, people don't want to waste vaccine. But how do you solve for that if there is this technology barrier? When there is this technology barrier, what's happening in the villages? People from urban India are gaming COVID to go to rural India and take vaccines that have been allocated to them. So there is a technology barrier that is in place. We need to leverage the pulse polio immunization program, the universal program that has worked for India. Use technology, but don't let technology be the barrier.
Yeah, I've got literally 4 minutes left on the program. I want to come to Pathikrit and Sanjay. Give them a couple of minutes each and give Tavleen a closing word. Pathikrit, go ahead.
I completely agree with what Swapneil said about the COVID issue. That could have been avoided, the technological barrier. But again, the issue of social distancing came in. But I think that was a problem that the government should have solved. There are 3 issues I want to address. Number one, we need more public health experts than bureaucrats to run the show so far as this challenge is concerned. Number two, even if Pfizer comes and produce with Cipla, the production scaling up is going to take time. In the short, in the short term, we need to import. That import there were restrictions on the import initially because of America not allowing it. That problem is now addressed. And number three, I think along with the vaccination, Barkha, it is very important. I would request you also, people should get diagnosed in the right time and start getting treated. I have seen people with vaccinate, even when they've got vaccinated, they died because they took it lightly. They stopped wearing the mask, they delayed the treatment, and by the time they went to the hospital or to the doctor, it was too late and it was all over. So it's a combination of different things that is needed. And I think the media has to play a very big role in that.
Yeah, sure. But I just want to say one thing, that even with, I know Swapneil may have a different scientific take on it and we'll have to do a separate show on that, but the pace of approvals has been woefully slow. So even with monoclonal antibodies that were used to, for example, treat Trump, we took many months to actually approve them. We rejected that in December, and now we've turned full circle and we've just approved it and they're just being used. Sanjay, do you see this vaccine program now being driven by the judiciary?
Well, I'll put it this way. I do see the handling of this crisis being audited by the judiciary at every stage, particularly when you see governments sitting on their hands or governments taking the wrong decision. They would have to at least satisfy reasonable men and women of law who have been appointed judges. And while the judiciary can't run the country, the judiciary at least can ask the right questions and hopefully nudge the government where there is executive inaction. The judiciary can't wish away the virus or rule out the virus or strike it down, but it can do a great deal to help. And particularly on this point of messaging, this has been a communications disaster also for the government and for the nation. Somebody was speaking about no care post-vaccination. There is one simple message that has to go even as we emerge possibly from the peak of the second wave, that even if the wave has gone down, even if you have had vaccine shots, you still need to be masked, you still need social distancing, and be careful all the time till the virus goes away. I don't see such messaging coming out either.
Well, actually, in the rural villages, in rural India, like in Tamil Nadu, Sanjay, where I'm sitting, there's no messaging. There's nowhere to go. There's no one to turn to. People are simply dying at home for the most part. I met a family who actually had to travel from the family. The man came from Bangalore to Hosur to find a hospital. And in Hosur, the hospital did not have oxygen. So he went from Hosur 250 kilometers back to Bangalore, did not find a hospital and died in the ambulance. This is actually what is happening. This is what is happening, right? The rural healthcare infrastructure is non-existent. Tavleen, last word to you.
I want to see the central government stop denying that we are in a huge health emergency. All they do, you talk about the media. Every time I write about vaccinations, and I've been doing it for a few weeks, I get attacked for being anti-national. And, I'm told to go to Pakistan every 2 minutes. Okay. So what I want to say is the political will to stop the denial, to admit that terrible mistakes have been made, administrative failures that amount to manslaughter. And what the Prime Minister now needs is a war room with every chief minister on board, medical experts on board, meetings every day, and a huge chart in his office so that he knows what the problem is. At the moment, they are in denial still. And that is really, they have blood on their hands.
I mean, those are probably the strongest and clearest articulation of the crisis we're in, and it is a full-blown health emergency. It is no less than a war. It is more casualties and scale in challenges actually than any military war I think India has ever fought, and a beginning would be to acknowledge the magnitude of this crisis. Tavleen, Dr. Ganguly, Sanjay, Dr. Swapneil, Pathikrit, thank you. To our audience, we continue our travels through the heart of India, so do continue to follow the Mojo story. Thank you for watching. In 15 minutes from now, we're in Tamil Nadu. We'll have Tamil Nadu's finance minister live, so do tune in. In the meantime, to the rest of you, thanks for watching and see you tomorrow. Goodbye.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.